Dr. Jason Johnson. What's up, Jason?
I am black and alive, which is
Yes,
more than can be said for a lot of us right now.
exactly. I was so moved when I heard you on Deadline, Nicole Wallace's show on MSNBC yesterday. Uh, you really killed it, just talking about how killed isn't the right word. I'm sorry, but you just really nailed it. Just talking about how disgusted you are right now. And I wanted to chop it up with you about, you said it when you were on air, but I wanted to go deep about it for a minute. You mentioned Daniel Cameron
Yes.
and the importance, of course, who is the Attorney General of Kentucky. And you kind of explained the importance of him being a black man in this
Hmm.
black body who found a way to make sure that no officers are charged with
Right.
Breonna Taylor's killing. And the
Hmm.
reason why this is so important to me is because there are people who are specifically in a space, they are on black bodies, and they are upholding white supremacy. And
Yep.
they have a serious contribution to upholding white supremacy. Daniel Cameron could literally be the next Clarence Thomas. And that's not me being overdramatic at all. Not me
Yeah.
being overdramatic at all. Clarence Thomas, at this point, arguably, is the most powerful black man in America. And he is anti black. So I thought it was really important that you pointed that out, because then it has to be, well, it can't be racism. It can't be systemic. Look at Daniel Cameron. Look at him. And it's important for him to be, although he's never tried a case, it's important for him to be in that role, allowing a black woman to die with no justice and had the audacity to say her name at the Republican National Convention. That was so important.
Right.
If you can just break that down for us.
Well, first off, and I want to thank you, Clay, because um, I think all of us deserve hazard pay. Who are in sort of public spaces and have to navigate this, and who had to sort of hold everybody's hand as we go through this collective pain and agony and frustration. You're doing fantastic sort of God's work here. Um, and I'm glad that we really want to focus on Daniel Cameron, because this is what I think is important. There's a lot of laziness out there in public discourse. It's easy to just call black people who are Republicans to say they're selling out, to call them Uncle Ruckus, to call them Stephen, all of which are terms that we can use sort of with ease. But I think that actually diminishes how dangerous it is to have black people in positions of power that have absolutely no conscience, and in fact are as aggressive in killing black bodies and diminishing and marginalizing black bodies and lives, because that is their payment. That is their remission to white people for being allowed to have the position that they're in. And that's Daniel Cameron. I don't care that Daniel Cameron is a conservative. I don't care that Daniel Cameron is a Republican. I don't care that Daniel Cameron has a white wife and that he was posting pictures of white fiance, him and her on Instagram when Breonna Taylor was still dead in the ground. All of those things may be reflections of poor choices or politics, but here's where we have a problem. A woman died and she was shot by police officers. And rather than holding those police officers accountable, not only did Daniel Cameron not hold those cops accountable, but he pretended, by using black Southern colloquialisms, to have some sort of empathy for her and the millions of other people in this country who are pained by her death and how she was treated. That is what makes him a disgusting human being. If Daniel Cameron just wanted to say, look, this is terrible and it's a tragedy, but that's what the law says. If he said that, okay, fine. I can call him a coward. I can say he has no soul. I can say he is typical of politicians. But when he stood on stage and said, if this had happened to me and my mama, and then he holds himself as if he has tears, I'm so sick of that shit. Just so sick of it. Stop performing. You don't care. If you cared, you'd have done something about this over the last 6 months. If you cared, you would have actually been able to answer some of the questions, like, why can't you tell a reporter what the racial demographics were of the grand jury. There's no rule against that. That's not delivering anybody's personal information, probably because it was an all-white grand jury. We also know, and the public knows this, even if you aren't a lawyer, but the public learned this during Ferguson, that basically, you know, the conventional wisdom goes that a prosecutor can indict a ham sandwich. Here's what's interesting about what Daniel Cameron didn't do. If there are any questions about how Breonna Taylor died, that is why you go to trial. The whole point of a grand jury is, are all of our questions answered? For him to sit on that podium, stand at that podium and say, we don't know which bullet actually killed her, we don't know the 5 other bullets that shot through her, that's why you have a damn trial, to find out how many bullets hit her, what impact they might have had, what are the consequences of her laying there bleeding for 20 minutes, and the cops did not render any sort of aid. He didn't do any of that. And then wanted to wrap himself in a culture that has bled so that he could even be in the position he is in now. That's what makes it disgusting. Not his politics, not his party alone, not his marriage choices, not him showing up at the Republican convention. It was his refusal, an absolute abdication of his responsibility to investigate what happened to a public servant that was shot by other public servants and then try and wrap himself in black culture when it was convenient. And it ain't like we ain't seen that before, because 25 years ago when Clarence Thomas was being caught for talking about pubic hairs on a Coke and sexually harassing women throughout his entire time at the EEOC, the moment stuff got hot, he said this is a high-tech lynching of an uppity black man. I'm sick and darn tired of African-American conservatives who decry black culture as degraded and foolish and mediocre and responsible for all the ills of this community, immediately wrapping themselves in the patina of blackness the moment that they're called upon to justify their positions and behavior.
Can we get a ding or something? And here's the other thing too, and I want folks to understand this. Some folks who might be listening who may be non-black. This kind of behavior, the one who sees beyond their lens, the unicorn who sees it differently, it's profitable. You think about Roe versus Wade, Norma McCorvey, right? She was a part of Roe versus Wade. She's the case that goes to the Supreme Court. She comes out later and says she is against abortion. She is funded by the Christian right. She makes tons of money. She says in her final years, it was a lie. I did it for the money. I did it for the attention. It was a bonanza for her. Same thing when you have an LGBT person who says they're an ex-gay. They will make tons of, there's ex-gay ministries. They will get tons of money, tons of profit. Same thing. I know people who tell me that their family came to this country illegally, right? Yet those particular people are against immigration.
Oh, completely.
It is.
Look, Clay, I want to add to this because this is key, especially for those of us again who are blessed to be able to do this work in public discourse. I know back in graduate school, and I'm just gonna be candid. If I took my rhetorical skills, wit, candor, and intelligence and decided that I wanted to be a pro-Trump guy, I'd take Tucker Carlson's job in a minute. I'm that good. And there's always room for black people who want to sell out other black people. I mean, let's just be candid. If you want to be a black person, if you want to be Jason Whitlock, I said it. If you want to be Candace Owens, I said it. If you want to be a black person whose entire shtick, whose rhetorical strengths and skills are spent blaming black people for anything and everything, there will always be money for you in white supremacy. Always. And I want to make this clear because that's different than being a conservative. That's different than being a Republican. You can be a Republican if you want to be. You can be a black Republican if you want to be. You can be a black conservative if you want to be. I don't care. I think everybody should be allowed to be what they want to be. But there's a difference in being a conservative, and there's a difference in being a Republican or even a conservative Christian, and being a black person whose entire public persona is to attack black people or rationalize the abuse of black people. That is where we have a problem. That is where I have problems with people like Daniel Cameron. That is why I have problems with people like Clarence Thomas. That is where I make a distinction between African-American Republicans that I know, like Michael Steele or Tara Setmeyer or Lenny McAllister. I may disagree with all of those people, but I know they're not anti-black. I know their policies aren't driven. I know that their political opinions do not stem from a place of black people are terrible and irresponsible and inherently morally incapable of participating in the American project. I know that's not where their belief system comes from. And whether or not that is where Daniel Cameron's belief system comes from, that's how he operates. That's how he's doing his job. That's how he's behaving in a public scene. And again, if you're going to do that, then embrace it entirely. Be Ward Connerly. Be a self-loathing black person who decides that, you know, affirmative action was great when you had it, but now it's terrible. Go ahead, be that person. But don't gaslight us. You know, and I want to say this also because this is key for sort of what you do and being here at SiriusXM, because I want to go into this particular thing about like Tucker Carlson and his ilk. I don't usually, this is very rare for me to ever talk about other people in media because I don't always think it's professional. But I think it's important to say in these kind of environments. Lest anyone out there thinks that what Daniel Cameron did yesterday is a neutral application of the law, that he was hamstrung by what the law said and we're attacking him unfairly. If that was the case, if this was merely about the law, then you wouldn't see racists in this country so excited and so galvanized by what he did. It would just be a sober application of the law. It'd be no different than going to traffic court. But I know that this drives racism, and he knows that this drives and rationalizes racism, not just because of the people who cheer his decision, but because I know that whenever a clip of me on MSNBC is played on Laura Ingraham or Tucker Carlson like last night, I get a torrent of racist emails. Mm-hmm. They know that. People calling me nigger, people saying that fat monkey died and she was supposed to. I literally have that email right now. I posted it on Twitter earlier today. You can see it at Dr. Jason Johnson. And that happens because I'm a black person who actually has the audacity to say that other black people can be anti-black, not because they're Republicans, not because they're conservatives, but because they advocate or justify or rationalize laws that kill us. And they're always looking for a new one. The Trump administration is always looking for new black people who want to justify it. 24-hour cable networks are always looking for somebody who wants to rationalize this behavior. Bigots are always looking for somebody who wants to stand in front of their own people, as you said, an LGBTQ person who wants to say, I'm gay, but I don't believe in gay marriage, right? A woman who says, I'm a woman, but sometimes I think women are making things up when they talk about sexual harassment. The powers of oppression are always looking for the oppressed to give them justification and rationalization, and you will be rewarded handsomely for it. And if I had chosen at any point in my career, Clay, if you woke up tomorrow and said, I want to be an anti-black, anti-LGBT black man, you'd have a show on Fox
News. I'd be right before Laura and
Friday.
Yo, listen, Jason, if you and I said, we are now Trump supporters, primetime show on Fox, a duo, Jay and Clay.
If we said we took the red pill, we could make a fake viral video, I swear. We could say, you know what? Me and Clay Kane, we took the red pill. We realized Trump is our guy. We would have a primetime show on Fox, 8 o'clock Friday. By tomorrow. Right. Sign, check.
And Jason, regardless of our receipts, regardless of in the past, it is clear that we're lying. Look at Candace Owens. Yes. You look at her past, it is clear. This is the person who says the NAACP is a disgrace, and they helped her win a lawsuit of $37,000. And
yeah.
It's even if the receipts are there, because the conservatives or the Trump supporters, they are willing to cash out the money because you are selling your soul. We're going to cash it out. You're selling your soul. This is profitable. And that's really hurts me. And I want to say this as well. For people who might think different, imagine this. Imagine if Breonna Taylor was in her apartment, but her name was Becky Taylor. And let's say one or two black police officers had a no-knock warrant, and barged into her apartment. And Becky Taylor and her boyfriend Ken Walker, they had a weapon because they are law-abiding American citizens who love the Second Amendment.
Registered legal gun, yeah.
Registered legal gun. What do you think would happen? And the reason why we know the difference is because we have Muhammad Noor and Justine Damon in Minnesota. The first time in over 40 years an officer has been convicted of an on-duty shooting happens to be, not saying he didn't deserve it, but happens to be a black police officer named Muhammad who shot a white woman named Justine Damon, and he said he was in fear of his life because she was allegedly running toward the car. That's the kind of things that we're talking about. And speaking of Fox, I used to go on Fox News, and I still have the all the messages. The kind of evil that I would get when I was on Laura Ingram's show, I vowed to never go on it again. The kind of disgusting comments I would get. You shit-faced nigger, your skin is the color of shit, you're this, you're that, you commie, somebody. I mean, I would post them on my Instagram. But the kind of hate that I would get. And when I'm on MSNBC and make a comment that folks don't like, I don't get that.
You don't get that. No.
I don't get that.
No.
I may get, you're dumb, I don't agree with you, but the kind of vitriol, and that comes from specifically a Fox audience. So those things, when you think about if she was Becky Taylor, when you think about the profit of being the delusional Trump supporter that will hold up white supremacy, it is one of the many reasons I know folks are tired of me saying it, but 57% of folks voted for Daniel Cameron. 57%. He's only been the AG for less than a year. That just shows that no matter what you think, reparations, the 94 crime reform bill, we got to show up. This could be our last shot to show up.
Well, and I want to add to this because I think it's important for us to understand, and I tweeted this yesterday. As sad and upset as we may be about what occurred, and for good reason, we have to understand that it's also performance art. And that's part of what I said yesterday. I'm not performing black pain. I give, I have a lot of great colleagues at MSNBC, and I give Nicole Wallace a lot of credit. And I said it in that segment because Nicole Wallace was doing good journalism by saying, let's specify who's actually out there, right? She wasn't painting everybody in a broad brush. She was saying, like, look, these are the protesters. Who are the people in black? Who are the people wearing guns? Who are the people doing this, that, the other? Because all too often what ends up happening, and Daniel Cameron did this, and he did this at the Republican convention, and he did this yesterday, when he just talks about, well, just there's people out there and they're going to want violence. Well, who are you talking about? Because most people out there protesting, I'm sure lots of people in your audience have been to protest. You make a sign, you go out there, you protest, and you go home. That's what most people do because they got to go to work the next day. They got kids and they got other stuff to do. The people who are out there later, and I'm not just talking about violence and property damage because I don't play that game. I think it's ridiculous. Anytime, the great Bree Newsom, the activist who climbed up and pulled down the flag in South Carolina, had this great series of tweets where she said, when I hear a lot of you people, it's like the person who says, well, I was against slavery until I heard that they burned down a cotton field during a slave rebellion. Really? Then you weren't really against slavery. If burning down the cotton field was enough to make you change your mind, you weren't really against slavery. So I don't play this game of like, oh, hey, a black woman got murdered and all the cops got off and a Target gets burned, and now suddenly you don't believe that Black Lives Matter. Whatever. I don't care what you have to say. But what I think is important about what Nicole did and about what we have to do in these sort of public discourses is sort through the dross and recognize the lie that's being told and recognize that what Daniel Cameron did is also a dangerous warning, because the only reason it was done is because they're aware of the fact that people do have the freedom and the right to assemble and complain and protest against their governments. The fact that he has to do that is indicative that we still have power. I promise you, if Donald Trump is allowed to remain in office, and he's made it abundantly clear that he's not only cheating right now, but he'll do anything he can to just stay, he won't leave unless we force him to leave, he will declare public protest to be illegal, just like DeSantis is trying to do in Florida, just like Republicans are trying to do across the country. They will simply shoot people in the street. If you don't think that's real, take a look at what he accepted the Turkish Secret Service doing when they beat up protesters. He allowed foreign Secret Service to beat up American citizens and didn't do anything about it. He allowed his own Secret Service to beat up Americans and clear them outside of a church so he could hold a Bible upside down. So Daniel Cameron making that announcement is still a reflection of the power that we have, even though he was gaslighting us. We have to exercise that power as much as we can, because we will lose it, just like your right to vote, just like your right to assemble, just like your right to use, airline points. You don't lose them, you don't use them, you'll lose them. And that's what we're faced with right now. And I want to say this in close. This is a really important thing over these next couple of days. I know a lot of people out there are debating, not just, like I said, I don't believe in undecided voters, but they're deciding, do I want to bother with the process of voting? I want you to be very clear when you look at what happened to Breonna Taylor and how that applies to what we're facing. If the police can break into your home and shoot you in your bed and get off scot-free, they will do that to anyone as often as they can, as many times as they can, and then they'll just start doing it to people who they don't even have arrest warrants for. They will start doing it to people who they don't even have any questions about. They'll just kill black people for being black. The line between what happened to Breonna Taylor and what happened to Ahmaud Arbery,
both of them, John. Mm-hmm. Well said, brother. Listen, I want to thank you for being out there. What you say is so crucial. It's so important. 40 days, man. I just hope that people are hearing and listening. And, it's real talk. And registering. And there's still time. There's still time to show up and change this.